Sorry about the delay. We can resume, Jason.
All right, I will continue. Let me kind of touch or go back a few seconds, but the reduction in our vacancy rate has been the big story. The second half of the year, we've set out on a really aggressive recruitment, interviewing, promotional efforts. Because our number one priority has been addressing that and getting the staff in place. We had that high vacancy rate as we went through the pandemic. We had a very high rate of retirements and separations, coupled with a hiring freeze. So while doing all of that, we've been trying to keep up with our regular workload because staff has been the most important aspect to all of this. So last update, we were working through our internal promotions. We have now brought on a total of 37 new engineers as of January 1st, 2023. That has actually increased by 2 since we brought on 2 more since we made these slides. So our vacancy rate has been cut in half. So this is 40% of our staff level engineers. As you can imagine, that has had quite an impact on our resources that we're trying to keep up with the workload because we were missing 2 out of every 5 engineer spots. So we're obviously not done with this. We are making our next round of promotions. I just mentioned the manager promotion. We have an open engineer 2 recruitment because we're trying to get experienced air quality engineers. But we're in full training mode right now for all of our new staff and our new supervisors. And I hope everybody sees the commitment we have here to try and remedy this situation the past couple of years have handed to us. So our past annual recruitments have been about 15 new engineers. So we've over doubled that right now. This has been a big task. Additionally, we're looking to add more review staff to some of our most impacted teams, as we'll get into that data, but specifically the waste management team. And I'm going to touch on that in our next agenda item. So I do want to thank all our managers, HR staff who's not with us, and our admin staff as well, who played a big part in making this happen so quickly. But as we work through this training mode and get everybody up to speed, want to encourage facilities to continue to reach out to let us know their priorities. So we can better address their projects through all of this. Next slide, please. Okay, so next we're going to dive into our current experience levels as we work through our vacancies. As you may know, our engineer class is divided up into 3 classes: assistant, engineer 1, engineer 2. Beyond that, we have broken up our experience levels into three different classes: apprentice, journey, and expert. As a new air quality engineer grows in their career, they become more familiar with the vast landscape of regulations, air pollution control technologies. They become, they develop into the expert levels, but it takes time. So job class wise, an expert level, we've looked back, that's an air quality engineer with about 2 to 3 years of experience. And so what we would ideally like to see is about half our engineers be at that expert level to see handle some of the more complex projects, and then spread out that workload. What we are seeing with the data is we are doing really well with the simple small business applications that can go out quickly. Where we're seeing delays, complications is where we need that experience with the expert level engineers, so that we're currently redeveloping right now. So I want to touch on the box on the right just before we move on to the next slide. The green is the good. That's when we have expert levels above 50% in the teams. Amber or yellow, depending on your monitor, is in the middle, and then red is less than 25%. Experience expert levels in those teams. So let's go to the next slide, please, and show what we're seeing with our teams. So this is detail of each of our permitting teams. and the experience levels, of our staff engineers. So what we've done is compared it to the end of our last inventory reduction program, 2018. That was the inventory reduction that started in 2016. At that time, our median experience levels for staff level engineers was at 19 years. Currently, we're at 1.5 for our median. So see some raised eyebrows. Yes, we have some work to do. We realize it, but we're going to try and rebound through all of this. Just so everybody's on the same page, I'll walk through our team designations really quick. Team A at the top is our waste management team. Team B, B1 is our coatings team. C is our refinery team. D is our mechanical team. E, energy. F, chemical. That's all under one manager, Shannon Lee. O is our operations team. That's general commercial gas stations, engines. Then we have our permit streamlining and reclaim team, PS/R, and then our new special projects team, which didn't exist back then. But you can see the precipitous drop off for some of the teams. If you look at A, in 2018, there were about 7 staff with 5+ years of experience. Actually, much of them had much more experience than that. Now, as we work through this, there's only 1 left. So team B, very similar situation. I'm not going to go through all of these, but for, like these 2 teams, most impacted, we moved around some workloads. Team A, I mentioned, we took away the energy sector from that team. Also back then, we did add a senior engineer and a supervising engineer to that team. Unfortunately, we had some untimely departures. So we lost 2 seniors and a supervisors in 2022 and 2023 timeframe. So we're looking to fill that supervisor position. We've already filled the seniors. We're looking to fill that supervisor, hopefully within the next month. And then since the team is still playing catch up, add a 3rd supervisor position. That is critical because that is our start of our review and approval stage there, that they can act on those applications. And then we're also looking at additional contractor assistance for that team. So through all of this, we're looking at enhancing our training so we can shorten the learning curve here. So the good part is we have brought on board some very talented engineers that we're looking forward to see grow in their roles, but it is going to take some time. So we'll be on top of this for a while. We're not settled on just filling this. We're looking at, as I said, lessening that learning curve. Next slide, please. Oh, I think that's the end of this agenda item. So I will pause there. Let's first go to any committee updates that we may have, or not updates, committee comments we might have.
So thank you, Jason, for the detailed presentation. Appreciate the challenges and getting staffing back to where it should be. I guess the obvious question is we have quite a backlog right now, and considering it's going to take, I mean, your slide says 3 to 5 years to get people up to speed. How are we going to get permits going at the moment? If we're just relying on staffing and training staff, it's going to be quite a while. And at least my members and myself, we're already in mode for several years picking which is the important project. Now they're all important. And now we're having a kind of deadlock of, I have a critical project. I'm starting to install things without permits. So that's not where we want to be. So it's just more thinking beyond staffing. What can we do? I don't see anything here that I'm, looking at saying, okay, there's something wrong with your staffing. Obviously, you need to hire people, get them trained up, keep them. So I don't hire them. Things that have happened in the past where my organization did hire a couple of engineers, but retaining the engineers is really important. But also finding ways to deal with the immediate issues, what I'm looking for. And it'd be nice to brainstorm as far as what we could do. And you and I offline talked about some of that. I don't know if it's appropriate to do that later in the discussion as far as some ideas. You talked about consultants, but maybe there's a greater role for consultants and I don't know if retirees are still part of the solution temporarily too.
Yes, they are. I mean, we'll touch on this in some of the later items, but in terms of this team in particular, what I did this is pretty much an announcement, is we are adding a third supervisor to that team. We didn't realize the second supervisor, Streamlining, because that person departed unexpectedly. So we're now going to triple the supervisor level. That will alleviate for that team, Marilyn and Angela's, or the dependence just on them, and add those additional ones. The contractor, what we're looking at is maybe developing additional templates, a more focused approach on the waste management team, and then maybe take it to the other impacted teams, because we do have some other teams that are seeing that had that initial staff turnover. They're seeing it now, but then also looking ahead, we have some teams that are going to be anticipate that are going to have staff retiring. We can now get ahead of that. We're identifying that now. I think a lot of the resources our COO, Susan Nakamura, has put in place has allowed us to move before retirements. So we've been able to utilize that. The retirees are still on board. Subsera, the Retirement Association, we did extend some of them, but they did express their concern about extending this as we brought our resources on board. So this shifts our focus to contractors. And I think that's what we're going to be doing in the next half of a year. What we would like to do is, instead of taking this on offline, is to continue to utilize this task force as a resource, but have a waste management focus, since this has been an identified concern. And we'll talk about this, I think, in like 2 agenda items, but it's more going to be how to fit in that strategy and schedule them, because so we look at the schedule. If we add a couple of those, we're looking at probably bi-monthly updates, which is probably appropriate for this term, as we're getting back up to speed and trying to resolve some issues. So we're trying to throw the kitchen sink at it. There's a lot going on. We recognize it. We're not saying this is going to be the status quo, but we're hitting this hard.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm kind of the squeaky wheel on the waste side of things, but I guess the bigger picture would be for your table, which is very helpful, of which team has the experience. I guess the other element is, how are they doing on the backlog for each team? If there's one that's having a huge backlog, are resources being shuffled to address that?
Yes, and that is now that we have the resources in place, that is what we're looking at, is that resource distribution to see, who comes up to speed. And some of those that do have the experience may not be there for too long. We're trying to get, the resources behind it. So there's succession planning behind it, but that is at the forefront. And we do have cross-training planned for February. Angela has been tasked with that, to help them with some of the soil vapor extraction. That's what's going to be the plan. So again, alleviate some of the processing review burden. We have trained staff in that, and then they can focus on some of the other projects. And then we have some other things planned as the new supervisors come on board, as far as we're going to strategize on who takes the new, who takes the old. But we're interviewing for those positions really today through the rest of the week, and probably a couple more weeks, and then hope they'll be filled in February.
Yeah. So just kind of like reiterate what David said. Most of these are kind of addressing staffing, right? Are you guys planning to build any kind of templates, like you mentioned, templates like tools for the 400E form for the engines? Everything is kind of calculated for you on that. Are you planning? I mean, that's kind of part of the training, right? For the permitting staff, is kind of developing tools or some repetitive, templates that they can use in the future.
Right. So that is some of the focus we're looking at with the contractors. Also understand, and we'll be getting into it with the permitting enhancement program, which we're going to be presenting in the task force as a presentation. The focus of that is going to be the modernization of how those forms are handled. and develops. But, we're early in this. It's, 6 months into PEP, and we're going to be developing those tools and online forms. So it's, multiple approaches to do that.
Okay.
Then I see a couple of hands raised online. Bill Lamar, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jason. I was looking at your slides 5 and 8, and it looks like you've if I look at slide 8, it looks like and I add up the number of positions, looks like you've got 94 engineers. And when I look at slide 5, it looks like you've got 6 management supervisors. What is that ratio then 15 and a half or 15.6 engineers per manager supervisor? That seems to be a little on the high side. My experience is for PMs is 5 to 9 engineers per project manager, or for supervisor to employee, anywhere from 6 or 5 to 10. Do you plan on keeping it at that ratio?
So, thank you, Bill. What we have been doing over the past couple, I think, starting about 2022, but especially in 2023, when we added positions, is flattening out the teams. So we did not have that funneling effect and call it a single point of failure, where we're depending on one person for review. So we have been lessening the amount of reports to seniors and supervisors. I fortunately happen to have our org chart. I think for the waste management team, we currently have about 3 or 4 to each senior engineer, and then 2 senior engineers going to a supervisor. So that would be about 10 per supervisor, and, about 20 for that team. But it is that averaging for a manager is the 15 to 20. And we just expanded to allow that to happen. In some teams, it's a little bit less. Obviously, special projects is a new team. We're growing that team, going to be building it and then throwing more resources at it. Potentially more staffing, but right now we're still growing them. But this is part of our active planning to not only alleviate a little bit of the supervisor burden, but to get workload, moving and get that operational flexibility.
Well, yeah, and then my other question is, back on slide 6, your current, the targeted engineering and permitting vacancy rate is at 10%. Do you intend to keep it at 10%, or do you intend to go up to full strength?
We're trying to fill as many positions as we can as fast as we can. That is one of the priorities as PEP. So engineers, we are trying to fill everything. We tried to do that with our last couple recruitments. Obviously, when you hire this many in this short a time period, you are not always going to get all the candidates you want through the door, and I'll leave it at that. But as I said, we still have active engineer recruitments in place. We're trying to fill all our engineer spots. And then after that, we're going to roll into a continual recruitment for our engineer class to try and keep that going. So I guess the answer to your question is we're trying to fill everything.
Okay. So your ultimate goal then is to have a 0% vacancy factor then, right?
For our engineer, our target's going to be 10, but for engineers, we're really trying to fill everything.
Well, why do you maintain a 10% vacancy factor? And
so
if you've got backlog work to do, as David pointed out, why insist on a 10% vacancy factor? what he's
It's
saying
not
on that.
insistent. It was our target to try and reach it through PEP. We've met that and we're going to keep going. The other part of this is understand we do have some administrative support staff that we may not be filling. We are keeping the appropriate levels of administrative staff to support our permitting functions, but we may keep some of those empty through this. But from an engineering and especially the permitting perspective, it's all systems go to try and fill these. It is not the backwards looking. We wanted to reach the 10 and surpass it and make sure we're remaining below that 10, not to hit that.
Okay,
Think of
well,
it as a goal line, not a budget maintenance.
okay, well, I think I'm going to hang on to this question for our next meeting and see where we are at that time. But
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, because I think we've already dropped probably into the 8s now. So let's move on. And Bill Quinn, you've been patiently awaiting. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Jason. So this kind of builds on Bill's question, but I remember when we went through the budget process last year, your division was given an additional boost in funding. Everybody else, I believe, was at CPI, and you had CPI plus. And I know SEEP supported that, and I know many other businesses supported that. What type of impact has that had on your hiring? I mean, is that something that has helped? What did we get for agreeing to an increase beyond CPI?
That has been very helpful. It has given additional resources to the teams. We've already filled those spots. So in some cases with the supervisors, we've filled them, and unfortunately we lost those with some seniors, but we subsequently filled the seniors, and now we're about to fill the supervisors again. So it has given us the resources to begin and attack these numbers. Again, we have tires on the vehicle now. We can actually drive it. We were missing, a lot of staff just from our regular workload, but then with those additional positions, it was to account for the additional workload that we had accumulated over the years with bark landing rules and other toxic rules, but we were never given staff, or it was very difficult for us to keep with our workload. So, we hit 2 items, there with that, but staff is in those seats now, or with some positions, they will be probably within the next couple of weeks. And now we're looking at becoming fully functional again.
Thank you.
Yes. Do we have any other comments from committee members before I open it up to the public? All right, let's take a moment. We'll open it up for public comment. Any members of the public, please raise your hand. And for Bill Quinn and Bill Lamar, who are at remote locations that are noticed, let us know if there's anybody there, but I think we have one hand raised.
Kurt Coleman.
Okay, Kurt Coleman, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good morning. Kurt Coleman, Executive Director, Southern California Quality Alliance. I know Bill Pierce, who's one of my members, is not here today. So I just wanted to let you know that his absence is not his indication that this is not a critical concern for us. The time it's taking to get permits is really an issue, and whatever you can do to speed things up. And in the past we've supported increased resources. I know you're trying to backfill positions and train as quickly as you can, but we support that, but we also, as Bill Quinn said, would like to make sure you're looking at all alternatives to reduce the backlog and streamline the process. So that's basically it. I just want you to know that this is a critical issue for us.
Thank you very much, Kurt. Yes, I think as part of that is keep reiterating, we have the people in the seats. the amount of time that took and resources was a big impact last year, but what it does now is a lot of our time is freed up to look at those streamlining approaches where we can. We can definitely jump into that. You're going to start seeing that now with this presentation later in the agenda as the start of it. You're going to be seeing a lot more in the next year, not just under PEP, but just our regular functions as our supervisors, managers now have the time freed up as they get staff trained, as we're not interviewing and hiring anymore. We get back to what our normal functions are. So thank you. Our next hand raised is Mark Abramowitz. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Jason. I've got a question and a comment. First, my question is, has the staffing shortages created a situation where applicants can no longer apply for expediting permit applications? That's something I've used a lot in the past for clients. Is that still happening, or is it changed?
Expedited is still available to permit applicants, and again, that mechanism has stayed the same. What it allows is for staff to come in on the weekends and work on those projects. So yes, that is up for businesses if they wish to utilize that mechanism, but it is available.
Okay, thanks. Secondly, my comment is I just wanted to congratulate you on the tremendous progress that you've been able to make in really cutting down those vacancies. It's clear it was a huge and difficult job to do, and I think everybody really appreciates the kind of progress that you've been able to make here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it really was a very dedicated effort, took a lot of resources. But again, it's, we took our moment, patted ourselves on the back, but it's not a time to arrest, and, we're still looking to move forward. So, but thank you for the sentiment. And then I think we have Rita Loof next in the queue. Rita, go ahead.
Rita Loof, Director of Environmental Affairs for RATIC International. And just wanted to echo some of the comments that have been made regarding the importance of reducing the backlog. And wanted to encourage you to look at all available options. I know you mentioned you are, so that's good to hear. One of the things that we saw with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's backlog reduction program was that they had a motto of not sweating the small stuff. So I think to the extent that you can work with the other teams at the district, like the rule team, to encourage policies that minimize permitting requirements for facilities that don't really have an emissions problem, then you free up your resources to work on the facilities that you really need to regulate. And you've heard me say these comments as part of the Rule 219 process, where we have facilities that are literally installing equipment with zero emissions, but they still need to get a permit. So that's still impacting your engineers. If you were to free up that workforce for other issues that are maybe more important as far as emissions perspective, then that would benefit your backlog reduction efforts. So I guess that's a long way of asking the question, are you looking at some of these bigger policy issues that maybe go into working with teams outside of the engineering and compliance team So just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. I've always been a big proponent. I call it streamlining through rulemaking, but some of the recent things this isn't necessarily at the forefront, you see it, but with 1109.1, we looked at many measures in the rule to help us be able to permit more easily. We had a backed exemption in there in order to facilitate some of the control technologies that are going in. On 1405, the ethylene oxide rule, you see a new mechanism there that we were exploring with the facility implementation plan. The concept there is where you would see individual permit limits or facility-wide permit limits, is putting those in a plan. So every time someone goes back to maybe expand, they don't have to update each and every permit in the system. It's done through a plan. And then also through 461, we've done a lot of streamlining for our mobile fuelers through that. So it is a concept we use. We're always looking for more. But thank you for that, Rita. And I think, yeah, with some technologies that don't require curing, that doesn't involve, an additional oven or a NOx emission source. So that keeps down, applications out of our backlog as well. But thank you. All right. And next in line, I believe, forgive me if I mispronounce it, Camila. Camila, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Camilla Duncan. I'm from Pearson Fuels. I was wondering, how are you addressing the applicants paying expedited fees but not receiving expedited service?
Yeah, so that is something we have been, as we had lower staff levels. Sometimes we get so many expedited requests, we don't get to them. What we do what we encourage staff to do is if they're assigned an application and they know they're not going to work on it expedited, we do try to communicate that to the applicant early. Some unfortunate circumstances, maybe they intend to and time passes, it's never worked on. In that case, what we do look at is reaching out to the team manager for that instance. And then we won't charge the expedited fee if we have not worked on it in an expedited manner. But what we encourage staff to do is stay in communication with the applicants and that. But if you do see that happening, and it has happened as we've been inundated with expedited requests, is we'll communicate and then it just won't be charged if staff has not worked on it on the weekends or after hours.
Thank you. And what's your timeline for expedited service?
So it really depends on the team because it depends. You're looking at gas stations, but we look at that all across from refineries to coating operations, dry cleaners, gas stations. It's team dependent and it's also equipment dependent. On some of our lower fee schedules, we do see some of the benefits of it. It could be on the order of a day, a couple weeks difference. Obviously, as you get into your more complex applications, that could change because those are longer term projects that may be taking months. So it is really dependent on that. But that's something, hopefully, you can have those conversations with your permit engineer at that time and discuss how many expedited projects they have at that time and when they're looking at coming in. And then also, George Ellis, is the manager for that team, is going to be presenting a gas station advisory later. There's going to be contact information there. We just encourage that communication to happen if you experience that.
Thank you. My last question. So if we had an application that paid expedited fees and has been in the queue for over 300 days, are we eligible for a refund?
It is dependent on that specific circumstance. I suggest reaching out to George because it depends. Has staff been working on it and the reasons why it is 300 days. Are there ERCs? Is there public notice? Is there tier 4 modeling that's being reviewed? It really is dependent case by case on that. So I recommend, it's not a yes or no answer, but we can have George reach out to you.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none. I unfortunately was anticipating this, but we're behind schedule, so we'll keep moving. Paul, if we can.
Jason, can I
Yep.
just
Oh, yeah.
really quick? Not to hold things up, but one, as far as the expedited, is this something we could revisit to say for the backlog, maybe just say what the timing is, if you have expedited permits versus non-expedited, might be useful for everybody, just to see the impact of the expedited process?
Yeah, I mean, we can touch on the data. We've looked at it. There are lots of variables, but I think we're open to discussing
Okay,
that
that'd be
and
great.
kind of how that works.
And then I'll talk about this more, but just when you talk about permit streamlining by rule, I have to raise my hand and say, permit streamlining should be discussed here. And I have a lot of different thoughts on changing the format of this group. I'll get into that later, but just want to prime it that we really should get back to the basics of it. Are there things on the table we could do to speed things up? And I think the way we used to do this group 10 years ago, going back to that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yep. All right, Paul, let's jump to the next slide. Yeah, next. Okay, forgive me, I'll try and make up some time here, but so this is our incoming applications. They were slightly down in 2023. We did see a large uptick in December. In January is over 300 applications came in 1 week. And we're continuing to use our 2019 as a comparable pre-pandemic baseline, which is the blue line in this with the subsequent years and the colored bars there. So additionally, the nature of our applications has been notable through this as we've been implementing 1109.1, and we've been seeing some external influences that have been affecting our gas station applications because of $500 million in funding available under the Inflation Reduction Act for E85 modifications. So as I've stated multiple times, we'll be covering that in our process streamlining for our gas station advisory, and we're looking to streamline that process more. So several agencies, including Water Board and DTSC, have upcoming initiatives that will result in new permits. So we're looking at taking a more proactive approach and better understanding those impacts, so we can get out advisories and then spread out those impacts to the permit application process. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we are now in the PEP period and we're coming out of the goals of the last inventory reduction program from 2016 to 2018, we're evaluating some of the lessons learned so we can implement and get some continual improvement out of our process. As many of you are aware, we were trying to maintain the overall inventory numbers through the pandemic. One of the major positives out of that is the development of our pending permit application dashboard, which gave us a lot of the data we need to evaluate our system so we can measure and manage it. It has given us the data so we can further focus on the bottlenecks we've done over the last couple of years. So some of the 2016 approach is just no longer applicable right now. We had a heavy use of overtime with experienced staff as the primary tool to attack the inventory. And we just came out of a period where we're missing, as I said, 2 out of every 5 engineers. So that wasn't necessarily an option available to us. But the goal of the inventory over incentivized the quick completions, the simple applications. So, we were able to get those small businesses out. And staff was aiming at the low-hanging fruit, but this meant projects were often less incentivized and they're just as important. So one of the tools used to lower the inventory was the permit to construct, permit to operate, call it PCPO, to consolidate the permitting action. We issue a permit to construct, it goes out the door, and we don't see it again. Some of the backlash we've seen from that is items we would typically address after construction. We issue a PC the applicant constructs, operates it. There may be slight administrative changes. With the PO approach, it actually required the permit applicant to come into the permitting system a second time, rather than us addressing it to the conversion of PO. So this is just an example of some of the lessons we've been learning. But we're going to dive into, rather than having the big bin of permit applications, we're going to look at a more granular approach in establishing multiple bins, so we can better analyze the resources in our teams. And then we're still going to track the inventory, but it's not going to be the one indicator of our success, because we do have some items that it just doesn't address or disincentivizes. Next slide, please. So that being said, this is the old look, and what we're moving away from this approach, but this is our overall inventory separated by age. Green is the newer applications, red is the aged applications. This chart even includes permits that we've issued permits to construct for, so the applicants can go and build their projects and operate it. Some projects become aged because, like refinery projects, they take multiple years. So staff or the facility really does not have a chance to get them out of the inventory. But that being said, we fully acknowledge some teams are being impacted more than others, and we're looking to get applications more quickly. And with these new goals that I'm going to be presenting under PEP, we want to make sure everyone's acting on permit applications in a timely manner. And then when they come in the door, they're being assessed and prioritized appropriately, and not just bumping other projects because we can get them out quickly and they don't impact the inventory. So I do want to point out the aged applications. For overall applications, you see the climb there as we've kind of worked it through this. And I also want to point out that we're still well below the inventory reduction effort of 2016, and that is despite working through the Bark Landing rules as well. So let's go to the next slide, please, Paul. If you can track the red line. If you actually subtract out permits to construct, our aged permit applications are not climbing as high. We've had a very focused effort through PEP on our aged applications. We've actually doubled the amount of actions we've taken on aged applications as compared to 3 years ago for the same time period. So we are starting to see progress. Obviously, this is just a leveling. We got to turn that curve around. So we're working through that as we get everybody trained. Let's go to the next slide, please. I'm not going to dwell too much on this. You do see the permit application inventory climb as we experienced our separations in early 2020, pre-April. What we do want to focus on is we want to keep applications in process where they can be worked on and where they're not awaiting us, the district, or the facility. But the ratios have more or less stayed the same over time. But we want to keep pushing that we're not waiting some sort of information or some sort of action. For interest of time, keep going into our dashboard data. So next slide, please. All right, I want to talk about this slide for a little bit, but this is our recent snapshot of our dashboard statuses. The current system, we are only able to take snapshots, but over the past couple of years, we've hit the areas where we could, if you remember. We had higher policy review numbers. We had higher source tests awaiting review. We've knocked that down, so they're under 1%. The one sticking point has been supervisor manager review. We expect some natural elevation of the numbers as multiple engineers feeds into a supervisor. But this is where we've been seeing the bottlenecks, and this is where we're throwing resources at this stage. So currently, supervisors, seniors, the review stage are split focus with training and review. So we're working through that. But we think naturally as we come out of this will get better, but we're going to be watching it. The other elevated field that we're watching is the additional info awaiting facility action. We're hoping that with PEP, we can start to address some of these items. But what we really want to move to under PEP is modernizing this dashboard, upgrading it so we get the data we need. Because what it doesn't show us is supervisor review. Is it sitting on somebody's desk, or is it going back to that engineer for more information? Is it making more than one trip? How long is it residing there? For additional information, is it the first request? Is it the second request? How long has it been since that request? Are we not getting responses out of a facility? We're not getting that functionality out of the dashboard right now, but that's what we kind of want to look at. So we can start to hone in on this. You know, do we need to consider denying an application because we're not getting the information? You know, or, you know, are there other improvements to the system we can get? So, you know, this is, you know, all great. You know, we're working through the training. It's really impacting our supervisor levels. On average, each of them has 3 new reports to them. So, you know, this is going to take the time, but we have some upcoming items we think will help address the backlog issue as we kind of get through the mud of this and get staff up and running. So next slide. And this is the look at our aged applications. So we see similar numbers for our supervisor review, and that makes sense. You know, also for complex applications, we're going to need more data and information. And these are going to be more time-intensive applications. And then, again, this is where the upgraded dashboard will help get us is, you know, is enforcement action warranted for facilities past their deadlines? What teams are seeing the impacts? What types of equipment are experiencing the longest delays? Requests for information? Do we need to look at our permit, our application forms and getting the information we need? So we're hoping to kind of do that and, you know, work through that through PEP. Excuse me. So I did whip through that item very quickly, but next slide, please, Paul. I'm sorry. We'll open it up for comments for the committee members.
Thank you, Jason. As always, good information. I guess quick question would be, as far as the supervisor manager review, do you have the ability to have manager supervisors from other teams help out, or are you just linear within one team?
We're already doing that. Yes. And that's sort of what's happening with the special projects team is they're pulling different projects from all the teams. And then, you know, sometimes it goes back, sometimes it doesn't, but we're not there anymore. And that's what's happening with, as we have more supervisors too, is we're encouraging the teams to share load to avoid that. So you don't get the pinch points in your process.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? All right, let me open it up for public comment. Any public comments? Let's see, Rita, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Well, along the lines of my previous comments, I would encourage you to look at things like administrative permit review. In the instance where you absolutely feel you have to have a permit, but the emissions are not increasing at all, that maybe you do like an administrative review and have a fee structure that is basically less fees than what a full-on evaluation would require. So one of the things that we've proposed as part of the budget process is to create a category for ultraviolet electron beam and LED operations, because currently we're lumped into the solvent category. There's no differentiation between a low VOC material and a high VOC material. All the processes get treated alike. So I really encourage you to provide a lower fee structure for those materials to encourage conversion to low VOC materials. So that would be a suggestion. You would have to work across the board with other teams at the district to implement that. But one of the things that I've seen throughout the many years that I've been observing the district is that departments tend to operate in silos, and that's just the way it is. So the more you can branch out and communicate with other teams, you can create a more holistic approach. So thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Can ask Mike Kraus. I think he would appreciate if we were more in a silo, but we're actively engaged with our rules team on almost all rulemaking efforts. Do want to touch on some of, obviously we'll do that budget process. Hear you on your suggestions. Something that I did want to mention is not every application has to go all the way up. Our lower levels are given authority to approve for, I'll just call them lesser projects for purposes of discussion that don't require that manager. So, we do have that discretion there. And I do want to add, typically our fee schedules do account for just staff time. Simpler projects have lower fee schedules, and that's what that's based on. But as I mentioned, we'll work through that budget process. Thank you, Rita. A few more comments. Next in the queue is Kurt Coleman. Kurt, go ahead. Oh, is that residual? Okay, we have some legacy. I'm sorry, I'm seeing the wrong. Michelle Brighter, excuse if I mispronounced. Go ahead.
Yes,
Michelle,
can
go
you hear
ahead.
me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for this meeting. It's been very helpful. I have a couple requests and questions, fairly general but related. First one is, could you guys update the telephone directory more often? It looks like 2021 was the last time, and that would help us follow the bouncing ball of staff changes. Also, the team directories, if they could be dated when they were last updated for the same reason. And then the question is, how do we know when our permit engineer has changed and it's maybe in somebody else's hands? How do we follow that so we can ensure timely communication and handover and everything?
Yes, thank you. On the first two, we will look into that. I do know, I think we just did an update not too long ago, but the dating is a good idea.
Yeah, the main page that's a different phone
Okay.
directory. I'm not sure who manages that. That's the PDF one. But our team pages have been recently updated, and we've made an effort to make sure those are up to date.
The contact directory is really outdated.
Yeah, that's
okay.
the old one.
Right.
I'm not sure who manages that.
Okay.
Perfect.
we
So I'm looking
will-
at our team directory and I don't see our current permit engineer's name on
Okay.
there. So that makes me wonder if
Absolutely.
he's still with you or not.
Yeah, and then as applications do change hands, I'm not saying this is, we're gonna encourage staff as they get new projects to reach out to the applicants. Some of them have hundreds, so there is some logistics issues there. It is available on our dashboard when it gets assigned in our system if you're looking to be proactive on that, but we will encourage staff as they take on new aged projects to reach out to the permit applicants so they understand that there's been a change.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for those suggestions. Don Nguyen, go ahead. Don, you can go ahead and comment.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Don.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Jason, and thank you for staff's presentation. Maybe to follow up on Michelle's, by the way, Don Nguyen, Orange County Sanitation, just to follow up on Michelle's point and to your comment about dashboard functionality improvements, Jason. Is there a way to maybe address that in terms of just not only the phone book updates, but maybe, I believe you had mentioned at a previous meeting, providing the public with an updated organizational chart so that to the question about whose desks is it on, that we can contact the right person. And in terms of the improvement, you had mentioned about supervisor manager review. If possible, can we improve that to be more granular to show, whether it's on the senior AQ engineer's review or a supervisor's review or the manager's review, so that we don't waste valuable time in contacting the permit engineer when we should be contacting someone else?
Yeah, thank you, Don. Yeah, that is down the lines of some of the enhancements we were talking about, is the granularity of where it is in the review stage. And obviously we make sure they're getting updates, but we have to add those and functionality, and then also the residents' time to get that data out of the system to make sure things are not lingering for too long. But thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no more public comments. Oh, go ahead.
Carol Kaufman with Paulton Water District, and it's really good to see this. I mean, the dashboard, I think, is going to provide very good information, particularly going down to the additional level of detail that you're looking at, because we also have the questions, right, where timing, where it's residing in the particular assignments, and so that'd be very helpful. And then to kind of tag on to what Rita was saying earlier about going cross teams and trying to look at, I think, how things are permitted so that there's more consistency of getting the permits, and that can help facilitate it. And also, I did have one other comment on the permit expediting. I'm just asking, I'm wondering for policy, I guess, is that a policy that establishes that process? Because I'm wondering if that policy might be revisited on how it's done, because if we submit an expedited request, the question is, if a permit engineer does not agree to work on a weekend on it, then can it be worked on during the week as an expedited permit as well? How that works, just to facilitate those.
Yeah, I think we can add that into our future discussion to kind of dive into the process and explain better how it works. More consistency. I think that's something we've now that we have more time and we're not interviewing, but that's something we've been honing in on. Actually, just last week, I pulled all managers, staff into a room for something we identified there was inconsistencies, and we're working on a document right now to do that. So that's something we're working on to get that consistency for identified issues. One of the teams looks to be using outdated emission factors, but we're just all going to get on the same page. It's that easy.
So that's a question I have about the emission factors then. So is there going to be some type of, I guess, I could say vetting or discussion with industry in terms of emission factors change? Is that could be, I guess, transparent to and for everybody to realize that now our application is going to go in, it's going to, because as an applicant, we're thinking of using the emission factors from past review, right? So if something changes, will we be able to discuss that, I think, prior to it being applied?
Yes, we're keeping, and again, we're about to jump into PEP, but transparency is part of that, and we're looking to communicate that even through newer mechanisms. But yeah, again, streamlining interests, let's get on the same page. But then as a permit applicant coming in, you have a good idea. We can also discuss this during pre-application meetings, is what to expect coming into it, where's the documents. That's something we're looking into, or will be doing rather.
I have one super quick comment. With XPP permits, expedited permits, I think you're going to reach a point where all your permits are going to be expedited, and if it'll be a disadvantage for an industry person not to expedite the permit, and how you're going to address that. Everybody work on the weekends, right? But that's kind of what it is.
Fully understand that. I would almost say some teams are almost at that, or just staff's not available. That's probably, again, we got resources in place here. They're going to get up to speed, and then we'll let that happen and we'll kind of see where we're at. But if that's the case and everyone is pretty much tapped out, then maybe that's a staffing issue, and that's what we need to stay on top of. if there's not enough resources just to do the job, then, maybe we need to evaluate that or what those fees go towards. Yeah, thank you though. All right, any other committee? I guess public comment, we can still keep open, but go ahead, stand up and you can identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Sharice Parker with Barkhausen Consulting Engineers.
Yes, hi.
We have a question. We have a couple of questions as far as timelines go. Can you please tell me with your backlog, how many days it is from the time you receive the permit application to the time it's deemed complete? And then also from the time that it's deemed complete to the time that it's approved?
Okay. We do have the data. It's a very general question because that spans multiple fee schedules, equipment types. We have hundreds of different equipment types. For gas stations, we can probably pull that specific data. George is going to jump into the advisory pretty soon, but what we have seen is because of the E85s and the nature of those, we've seen a slight slowdown because it's modifications of existing, but as far as actual data, we could probably have to follow up with that level of detail.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our next agenda item. Next slide, please. All right. So we came to the task force back in June for input on the chair's initiative for the Permitting Enhancement Program, or PEP, work plan. As I said, this is the first time we've come back to the task force since this was developed. We're going to be providing a PEP status update next week to the board, but we're just going to give you a quick overview so everyone's on the same page and we can have a discussion in the task force. But there are these 5 main elements, and staff and training are at the forefront of it. But we're also going to be modernizing our varied permitting system. And that's going to be one of our longer term efforts. And as I said, we're going to be focusing on transparency and then some streamlining and efficiency improvements as well. Next slide, please. So PEP and this task force do have some common goals. So we're going to be bringing a lot of information back here, but we're going to continue on a theme of automation and modernization, probably focusing more on modernization as we realize a lot of our automation opportunities. And then as we develop them, we'll be bringing them to the task force. And then also, and this has been brought up as well, but improving our website design and our dashboard for better metrics. So you see a theme here. We just had to get to the item. And then one of the specific measures we're going to be presenting shortly is the health risk assessment module we developed. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to dwell too long on, we've touched a lot on onboarding, so I'll probably skip through that. What I do want to hit is that third sub bullet is seeking training opportunities through industry. We are reaching out to industries if they're available, or anyone knows resources. We're looking for additional opportunities. If industries wishes to host on site and walk us through their processes. And again, in the interest of shortening the learning curve, we've already been connected with some industries. I do want to thank Bill Quinn and Sieb for connecting and making some of those upcoming opportunities as we schedule those. And so if you have any of those, please let me know. We're working on them to enhance our training efforts. I already mentioned continuing consultant support and our retiree support. So let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, this is some of the webpage design issues we were discussing. We received your comments before then, but this is going to be part of the PEP program to really update it, as it's just very linear in nature and difficult to add new items or important information. So, and also as we develop our online tools through PEP, we need to make those resources clear and easily accessible to the public. And then many of you will be end users, so we will be looking towards you for some testing opportunities as well. So next slide, please. Okay, I'll go a little slower on this one, but as I mentioned, we're revisiting our goals and trying to focus on timely permit issuance. Currently, this is our annual goal to act on 70% of our applications within 180 days. This is all applications. We're reporting this quarterly just to keep track on our progress. And we have been meeting on it, or we have met it the last 2 quarters. But it allows staff the time to approach and properly prioritize those larger projects rather than jumping on the big ones that may be easy just to keep the inventory number down. So these are reach goals with our current resources and experience levels. So it is an active effort to try and reach these 70%, as with all goals. So we become more experienced, we're going to revisit our goals and our processes to see where improvements can be made. So as I said, this still leaves the aged applications because there's still 30%, but we have a plan in place, the aged applications and work plans to address those. I already mentioned we've doubled our actions on aged projects since 2020. So this is our goal. We've been hitting it. We're going to keep trying to hit that number, but it allows staff the appropriate time, 180 days, to really try and get projects out the door. And then we hit them on the back end too with work plans for those aged projects. Next slide, please. So for Title V, we do have a different goal. This is different than the last slide because this is still in progress and this is an aggregate goal. But Title V tend to be our more aged applications, complex applications. Some go out a lot sooner than others. Some take longer. The orange bar is what we've already completed within our 18 months. We're on target to hit our goal. What the gray bar is our opportunities to hit our goal, things we can still act on within that time frame to hit that target. We're keeping a close eye on this, as I said, because of the resources. But the blue bar is all the applications we've received coming in the door in calendar year 2023. So this goal is upcoming, but we're looking at that increment there to try and reach that goal to make sure we're getting things out the door. And then again, it's there's other things to consider with Title V, with the increased public participation, EPA review stages, back and forth with EPA, and trying to stay on top of that. This is our goals, not EPA's, so we're working through that. But we'll keep reporting this progress goal as we go along. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're going to be having a lot more meetings. PEP is going to be implemented over 2 years, but we expect the IM-related items to take longer than 2 years. We're going to have our regular updates to the board. Next week is the first one. We have August 2nd there as a second one. It's a target. It's not set. We're kind of working through that. For our regular task force meetings, we've been doing typically second and fourth quarter of each year. But we will be adding additional task force discussions. As I mentioned, we're going to try and have a waste management focus on 2. We'll be working with the task force members, the public, on how to integrate that into our existing schedule. Maybe have a kickoff meeting and then go back and forth or bring it all together. And we'll kind of work with everybody through that schedule. But we're going to be having increased meetings. I think what this all comes out to is, in some form or another, we're going to be reporting on permitting about once every 2 to 3 months, which is going to be a lot more frequent. So I will bring lots of water for these presentations. But the other thing we saw we were lacking as we work on all of these is our ability to communicate with the public. What we're going to start doing, what we've launched, is a new permitting subscription list. what we want to do is do outreach for our permit advisories, PEP modules, anything we develop. If there's issues, meetings like this to try and increase public participation. We didn't have that mechanism to communicate with the public, so we're encouraging everybody to sign up, and we're going to be using this to do our email blasts and everything. You mentioned transparencies. This is kind of where we can communicate through that, point people to the website. So that's what we're looking to do here. So again, please sign up when you have an opportunity. We're going to begin utilizing this tool. And I think that is it for our next slide, please. We'll go to comments on our PEP item. We can open it up for committee comments.
I guess I'll jump in. Thank you very much. Good job. You need a water break with that much talking earlier.
I'll hand it off
Very
next.
useful information. But one thing I wanted to point out, and I alluded to it earlier, is the way this task force was originally focused was more of a problem-solving group. And the last time we talked about the backlog, 10 years ago, it was something where it turned into, when Lockheed Sisopoulos was doing this group, it turned into how are we doing in the backlog? And getting into here's staff presenting backlog-focused discussions. And there's a place for that, and it's very valuable. But the thing we're not doing is having the external feedback that I find can be very valuable for you. For example, when my members, I have all the wastewater folks in Southern California, my members come in and say, hey, we're having the same device permitted differently. We're having these inefficiencies or inconsistencies, and having a forum to bring that to you and say, here's something not only would help us out, but help you out to have consistency, standardization. And the thing I used to say to stationary source was, when you go in for a permit, it'd be nice to know exactly what you have to do. To say, okay, I'm going to permit my simple odor scrubber. I know what that is. I know the permit conditions. We know what the standards are for major, minor source. This is just straightforward. I submit an application. We know the permit engineers. We can get a permit quickly. But what's happened for a long time is it's more of case by case, and it turns into haggling. And it's not really like, here's something, you know what the situation is. It turns into, let's look into all these different aspects of the device and the facility that in a lot of ways maybe is not necessary if we do some homework behind the scenes. So my request is, let's go back to that format. I mean, the updates are useful, but I think the people who do permitting for a living and deal with this have a lot of good feedback that'll help everybody streamline the process. It's not a permit status task force. It's a streamlining task force. So I really think going back to that format would be helpful. If you remember Greg Adams, who's my former boss's boss, he and Mosen Nazimi would come up with the agenda, and they would tell everyone who would come to these meetings, it's not an opportunity to complain. The requirement was you have to bring productive, constructive ideas with solutions to the table. And when we did that, we tended to have some very good discussions that helped. We got some policies and consistencies, and I thought it helped both sides. So I really would encourage going back to that. That's my soapbox opportunity here. I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you. I hear you on the streamlining, and I think you'll start to see some of that approach as Bhaskar and George gets and Neil get into their presentations. We do the updates because it is there's streamlining, there's permit streamlining, there's process. We're working on permits. We're trying to identify bottlenecks to remove those from the process and get things moving. So that is some of the purpose of why we're presenting the dashboard data and making the staff moving, moves we are. I think we can, definitely start to get back to that as we look at more documents, developing handbooks, guidance documents, implementing contractors, and maybe, we kind of have a kickoff to discuss that. The haggling is, we do have templates. We have some in our tier 4 guidance. That's what we want to get to. We do get into case by case, sometimes with NSR issues. And probably as part of that, we'll probably, explain, we'll maybe have, affected industry, maybe present what they're seeing, and then we can kind of see from our side as far as what we see as a minimum baseline for permits for monitoring, record keeping, reporting, and, you know, the approach for enforceability, and then kind of come together and see how that works. But yeah, that's kind of the, intent moving forward with some of these.
I appreciate the dialogue. We've been talking offline, just for everyone else's benefit. We talked about, consultants and what role they can play. And we talked about maybe having templates, something that staff may not have the time to do, have a third party do it for staff's consideration. So that may be a way to.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Any other comments from the committee?
Yeah, Jason, I have
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to build on what David's saying and support it. I could tell that these meetings are an enormous amount of work for you and your staff. And, I could see why you'd only want to do this twice a year because it's an awful lot of work. But I think if you take a build on what David was talking about, where these turn more into listening sessions and where you turn to your members of the advisory committee to get input from them. So it's not a staff-driven meeting, but more of a, you organize it, of course, and monitor it. But it's an opportunity to build on the expertise that's here in this room. I mean, you look at the names, both attendees and panelists, and there's a lot of engineering expertise out there. And I would hope that you would look at those names and say, wow, these people could really offer us something, and turn this more into an opportunity to hear input from others as opposed to you delivering us what I think is very important information. I'm not saying do away with it, but if you have further meetings more than the 2 a year, turn them into sessions where you hear more from the people who are participating. That's my input. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bill. I think that's what we're looking at. Obviously, at some point, we'll have to present this, and I think it's just interweaving, maybe having those regular updates separately, but then having, what we're discussing, and we'll kind of work on developing that concept. All right, next in our queue. Okay, I want to make sure, do we have any other comments from our committee members? Seeing none, I'll go open it up to public comment first in our room. Ramin.
Good morning, folks. Ramin Kamardi, Western States Petroleum Association. I just wanted to pick up on a comment made earlier about the emission factor updates. That definitely piqued my interest in how notifications work. Is the thought that those would be part of this web page updates or the newsletter subscription, or is that something staff is still looking at or soliciting stakeholder feedback on?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
Factor updates as those get.
Oh, the emission factor updates. I think it's kind of a case by case as we go through permitting scenarios, but typically when we make implementation guidance, we can make those available to the public. And again, I think we'll entertain utilizing contractors to do this as well, but we're going to have a very transparent process through all of this. Obviously, as you start to get specifically into emission factors too, something Rita mentioned, we have our AR group as well, that, we need to interact and consult with them as well, make sure there's consistency in all of it. But I think as we develop documents, the webpage is a good place to make that public, and then also using the email blasts.
Okay.
But also, as you'll see shortly, is we're going to use this task force to discuss these items as well.
Yeah, well, we second the comments by Bill and David. I think that stakeholder pieces.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else in the room? Next public commenter, Rita, go ahead. Rita Luke, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you. I absolutely love the comments by David Rothbard and Bill Quinn. I think they were really well expressed, and we've been having the same conversation at the local government small business advisory group meeting about the role of the committee and taking more of an active role. Obviously, we appreciate the conversation and the presentation by staff, but like Bill Quinn stated, there's a lot of expertise on the attendee side and on the committee side that can give you those fresh ideas from a different perspective. And I wanted to vouch for you because on slide 22, you've already started doing that. We recently had a training with about over 24 engineers where we brought in our resident experts on ultraviolet electron beam LED technology to present to the new engineers. And it was pretty amazing to see all the new names. So you definitely increased your engineering staff, a lot of new people on board. So we appreciate that. And then on your outreach efforts, one of the suggestions that we've made is to list trade associations like the Small Business Alliance, like RadTech, like others in the room as resources. And I'm going to quote Bill Lamar. A long time ago, he said that the business people are loath to reach out to the district in many cases, but they might talk to RadTech. They might talk to the Small Business Alliance because they don't see those entities as regulatory bodies. So I definitely encourage you to list the websites as you're amending and changing the website to include the website locations for trade associations as well as other groups that are on the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, and apologize for not thanking you when I thanked Bill Quinn for that effort. I was aware of it, and thank you for arranging that for staff, that training session. So I do appreciate it, and your request is noted on the listing the trade associations. All right. Do we have one? Oh,
Mark
one more.
Abramowitz.
Mark Abramowitz. It's not popping up on the screen.
Yes.
Mark, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. I also wanted to speak in support of the comments made by Dave Rothbart and Bill Quinn. I also wanted to indicate that you may also want to share some of that information that you're getting from some of these trade associations with the rule development folks. I know that I frequently refer them to the California Hydrogen Business Council and also provide information to them in rulemaking on things that staff is not aware of in terms of technology. So I think there's a broader use of those kind of expertise tools throughout the district. Excuse me. Lastly, I wanted to suggest that this is a little bit along the lines of what Rita had said, but maybe a look at backed implementation as a way of reducing the amount of applications that come in. I know that you've told me that the district takes into account zero emission technologies, but from what I've been seeing in the Title V permit notices that I get, it's unclear that the district is making full use of zero emission technologies, which don't require permits. And to the extent that you can get some of these sources to go to zero emission technologies, which is actually supposed to happen at the BACT and the LAIR level prior to it making into the rules. And at the district, it seems to have gone backwards. There may be some opportunities for addressing the BACT LAIR determination process that could result in a significant amount of permit applications that actually don't have to be there, which would really free up staff. So I'd like to suggest along those lines, maybe in the future, a presentation on how the district does go about doing that analysis and how it works to ensure that the most stringent technology available processes and controls are used, and see how that might be fixed if needed or modified. And I think that might significantly help the workload. Lastly, I want to apologize for raising the issue of expedited permit applications, and maybe I was giving away some of my secrets as a helping clients get through permits fairly quickly, including the district once gave a client of mine a permit within 5 days of submittal. So that's worked out extremely well for folks, and I guess I'll be a little bit more careful before I give away all my secrets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We don't want a totally mum task force, but understand where you're coming from, and we're coming to the end of a backed effort. We do this in iterations, but we are going to be going back and kind of looking at next steps for the next round of backed. Do you understand what you're saying as far as discussing it as a permit streamlining mechanism, kind of straddles scientific review committee? So we'll kind of see maybe as we develop other things as far as what committee we discuss that in, but it is noted. We are working on some efforts through the AB 617 program to start identifying cleaner technologies that may be available to permit applicants that we're going to be working on in the next few months. So thank you for that work. All right. Or do we have any? No more comments. Thank you. So let's move to our next agenda item. I will ask as we move on for our presenters to try and keep things concise, but still deliver the information. But this is the best part where I get to rest my voice, and I will hand it over to Dr. Wong and Dr. Dhamapala, who will be presenting our web-based health risk tool that is part of our PEP program. Jillian, take it away.
Thank you, Jason. Next slide, please, Paul. All right, so very briefly, this is our effort to modernize our risk assessment procedures. We have a web-based tool that will replace these hard copies. So what this means for applicants is instead of having to go through attachment N to find factors, all you will do is plug into this web-based tool that Ranil will be showcasing for you, and hopefully it becomes much easier. It also allows us to incorporate updates to OEHA health values. So instead of having to look for those health values, they will already be built into the tools. What is important to note is that we are not changing any of the risk assessment procedures. Those still stay the same. However, we will be updating the factors that we use in currently what is called attachment N, with updated factors with updated metadata that will also be available for the public. And finally, I heard, we've talked a lot about streamlining. So one of the things that we added are going to be screening tables for both E85 and mobile fuelers. We did notice that large influx of permit applications. And so we've developed these screening tables as a way to streamline and hasten review of health risk assessments associated with these permit applications. So this risk tool is currently in internal testing, and we hope to release it for beta testing shortly. So if you are interested in volunteering for beta testing, we ask that you please send an email to Rula El Hajal, and her email information is on the agenda. And then she will get you in touch with us when it is available. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Ranil for him to walk you through a live demonstration of the risk tool.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, can I share my screen?
You may stand by, sir.
Okay.
And Ranil. Yes.
Okay.
You have screen share capabilities.
Good, thanks. So thank you, Jason and Juliet. So I'm just going to show you what is the part of this app that's complete, well, not entirely complete, but still in development. So this will eventually be hosted on our website. And I know that the text is not very clear. It's not that big. I don't know if I can quickly increase the size here. Let me just a little better. Too much. Okay. So it has basically a little bit of intro material there about what this tool is about and some basic information on how to use it. We did, as you probably know, we do have the meteorological data files served on our website. And that has to regularly be updated. So here we have a tool where you can interactively obtain all those data sets at different sites. So when you can pan around, it'll tell you which source receptor area you're in and whether it's an airport site or a South Coast AQMD monitoring site. And then if you simply click on one of those locations, there'll be a pop-up explaining some basic details and then a link to download those data files. So these are the files that you use in air modeling, as well as Tier 4 if you wanted to run it. Currently, these are available on our website, but for an older set of years. And here in this case, for Chino Airport, it's 2016 onwards, and they're not always consecutive years because of various data completeness issues. If you wanted to see the wind roses, what it's like, just turn it on there. And I know that's a lot, so zoom it into the sites of interest and oops. And then you could see how wind patterns line up and how they vary from one site to the next. There is a occasional need for obtaining hourly ozone data, and you click that, you will see the sites where hourly ozone data are available, and you just click that to download those data files. It's needed in certain AirMod applications, not all. Okay, so the health risk assessments, which are automated in this part of the tool, require essentially a little bit of selections on the user's part. So if it's a Tier 1 health risk assessment, then the OEHA tables that drive all those coefficients are in the background, they're pulled in. So typically we tell the applicants to obtain the latest OEHA health risk factors and use those in their HRAs, but this is all done for you. So you will be guaranteed of the latest OEHA tables here in the background. So you can pick your pollutant of interest, or you can, there's a little button up here where if you have a spreadsheet with that info, so you don't have to keep entering numbers all the time, you can upload it. I won't do that right now, but there will be a link here which gives you an idea of what the spreadsheet should look like. We do have a template that you can download, change the numbers, and then upload it back again. So this is, for instance, let's just click on a couple of compounds here, and then it'll generate a table further down of, okay, what are the emission rates? So you can change this to and whatever the numbers are, whatever the correct numbers are. So, and then once you submit, your health risk assessment will be at the bottom. immediately. I mean, these are bogus numbers, so you get crazy high application screening indices. So if it's colored green, it'll be a passing score, or if it's yellow, then it's above 1 and things like that. And you can download a spreadsheet of this to then subsequently insert straight into your application. So similar for tier 2. Get back to that. Here you've got a few more choices. You can pick the facility type from this list, and Jillian mentioned some mobile fuelers that have been incorporated here. So if it's like an ethylene, it's like an ethanol facility, then all you have to do is enter the throughput rate, not pollutant specific emission rates. So I'll just go with this. So supposing you have, I don't know, 500 million gallons. I have no idea if that's a reasonable number or not. And then the receptor distance, whether it is, let's just say you got 50 meters for a residential receptor, a little more for something else, oops. All right. And then you also get to pick your site, the meteorological station of interest, whichever is most relevant to your application. So let's just pick one here and just click submit, and your health risk assessment is at the bottom immediately. So you get your cancer risk, cancer burden, and the hazard indices. And again, for this particular type of facility, acute impacts are not applicable, so they're not calculated. And you can download this as a spreadsheet to be subsequently inserted into your application. So I'm not going to go through the whole list of functionality, but I'll also just show you one more little thing, and that's for tier 3. So supposing you ran your own model air screen, for instance, and you have some concentrations, and you want to determine the health risk associated with those concentrations. I'm sorry, this doesn't look the best with this particular screen size, but you also have the option of uploading a spreadsheet of those concentrations at different receptors, indicate whether some are worker receptors or not. So let's just say you have 2 receptors. It will create a okay, I'm not seeing one of the, let's quickly reload this. And if we go to 2, oh, never mind. We have to select the air toxics that we are interested in. So let's just pick one. And there you go. It created a table of concentrations at 2 different receptors for you. So you just enter the concentrations here. And at receptor 2, let's just say you have an annual average of whatever. And I'll just leave the rest of them blank. And you just enter that right in. And there is your health risk assessment immediately. All right. So saves a lot of, and then again, this can be downloaded for inclusion in your report. So saves a lot of time. Don't have to go through all keeping track of what's what, running calculations for yourself. It's just done for you. And the results are reproducible, saved, and easily used in your report. So I think we're behind on time, so I will stop there. And I don't know if you want to do questions now, Jason.
All right, I think we can open it up, but thank you very much for developing this. This is still in process. We wanted to present it here, get some feedback. Obviously, Jillian mentioned, we will be looking for testers, but we hope this is going to be a very useful tool for some entities, also information sharing, getting help going back and forth. So want to thank you for the effort that's gone into this, and then we'll open it up to the
I just have,
task force. Paul, go ahead.
yeah, I just have one quick comment. Since this is a permit streamline task, just kind of clearly state what we should submit with the application, either print out of the Excel or actually email the Excel output file to the permit engineer again to expedite the process rather than somebody have to type out. From my experience, I mean, from the permits I submit, the larger the company is still a paper check. So I still kind of print PDFs to the cashier register, to the cashier to submit the application. So just kind of clearly state what exactly you want in the permit application submittal in the webpage.
Yeah, and I think as we get through PEP,
Yeah.
we're going to be moving away
Yeah.
from that
Okay.
paper, because then it's now, electronic files, and you're working same file, it's web-based,
Yeah.
and you're looking at the same interface. So that's what we'll look at. But yes, obviously, as we further refine this, develop it, we'll be communicating what we need from permit applicants from this tool. Hopefully, make it, very intuitive as far as what you submit.
And if I can add, we also do plan on creating a user's guide. So that will tell you exactly how to walk through the tool, how to use that. And then as part of that, that's a great suggestion where we will add, how you should export or whatever files it is that we expect to be in the permit application to help streamline that process for applicants.
Right. Any other comments from the committee before I open it up? All right, let's go to public comment. Any public comments, please raise your hand or stand up. Maybe. No public comments. Okay. All right, let's keep things moving then. Thank you very much, Renelle and Jillian. Appreciate the information. We'll move on to item number 6. Let me just take a poll of the committee. Do you want to go through and present all 3 and then have the discussion, or discuss each one as we go for committee? Nothing. Then we'll do public.
I would say go through your presentations with comment at the end.
Sounds good. All right, then I will hand it off to Bhaskar Chandan, engineering manager and refinery team, and the back team. About a just go ahead.
Thank you, Jason. Just as a side note, I was at the Air and Waste Management Conference, the annual conference last year, and Dr. Dhamapala's name was mentioned on a few presentations. A lot of people in the modeling will know about him. So we are lucky to have him. He's coming from Washington and has done a lot of groundbreaking modeling work. So thanks. So we recently released the guidance for testing of Tier 4 emergency engines that we recently established a back standard for. So basically, this presentation is going through our policy memo. Next slide. In September of 2022, we established a new BACT for emergency IC engines greater than 1,000 horsepower that are located at major sources. Tier 4 final standards were established as BACT layer for these engines. And back then, one of the biggest concern was the testing of these engines and how we are going to do that. Other districts already had this policy that Tier 4 engines in place. They were requiring testing, but they were also in process of developing some guidelines. So we went down this path of developing some guidelines that not only the engineers can use, but the community, regulated community can also use. And that goes towards what we have been talking about, standardizing permitting, standardizing permit conditions. We will develop templates also, again, which would help expedite permitting of those engines and also standardize the permit conditions and permit wordings. So that was the goal when we started down the path. So to comply with the Tier 4 standards, there are basically 3 options. Either you use a certified Tier 4 final engine, or you use a compliant Tier 4 final engine, or you use a retrofit. And we have defined those well in the memo. So, compliant engines are basically certified engines with the inducement feature turned off. Retrofit engines, basically, if you take a tier 2 engine and put a pollution control equipment, we consider those retrofit engines. So requirements are slightly different between those engines. Next slide. So there was a lot of communication with the stakeholders, the industry, consultants, source testing companies, and the engine manufacturers also. We had multiple meetings with all of them. We even sent our draft guidance, distributed it internally and to the stakeholders also. And I think the final policy, the guidance policy that we have released has addressed most of those concerns. I think we have addressed all the concerns. And we understand this is a living document. As we go further along, we learn more about it. We might need to change direction on some of the things. So right now, what we have is released. We might change it in a year or so once we get more into it and get more information on that. But some of the stakeholder concern was allowing compliant engines, which we already have. Hours to test this engine, we limit our maintenance and testing hours to 4.2 per month typically. These engines would take a lot more than that to test. So that allowance has been included in the policy memo, where if you're testing that engine just for compliance purpose, then those additional hours won't go towards the 4.2 hours of maintenance and testing. Source testing requirements, the ISO 8178 testing requirements are really cumbersome, take multiple days to conduct those tests. It's a test done over 5 loads. It's a weighted average. So we didn't want to, these engines, even though they are permitted for 50 hours of maintenance testing per year, typically we have seen they only operate between 15 and 25. Most of these engines, they operate between 25 and 15 to 25 hours in a year. So we didn't want these engines to really run just for testing purpose and create pollution. So we looked at multiple options. One of the options that is most commonly used is the modified ISO 8178 testing, which significantly reduces the testing time. There were concerns on PM testing and accuracy of it in the field. So we have if you're using a CARB verified DPF, then PM testing wouldn't be required. But basically, we're saying we really cannot do anything better than that. If CARB has looked at it, if CARB has certified it, we will take that certification, not required to PM testing. So that is in the policy memo. Pool testing, we have some examples in the policy memo. That basically 1/3 of the engines being tested every 3 years. But again, those policies need to be finalized during permitting. I mean, if you have 10 engines in the pool, then it works. But like Microsoft data center that we based this achieved in practice case for in Quincy, Washington, they are over 100 engines. So we really don't want 30 engines to be tested every 3 years. So that case would have to be looked at differently. So we couldn't cover everything. We have some basic parameters. But the final, pool testing would be determined during permitting stage. We have some guidance in there in the memo. And alternative testing options. So the certification standards are based on mass limits. And there was concern that in the field, flow measurements are not accurate. Sometimes, the fuel flow measurements or stack flow measurements, because these engines are not really built with the stack and scaffolding and everything. You have to put that in place. And there are some uncertainties there. And we have seen with other districts that some of the source tests failed because of some problems with stack flow data, stack flow measurements. So we are allowing for concentration limits as part of the permitting process or testing process. But there are some issues with the concentration, converting mass limits to concentration. So that we have to consider that when we are requesting the facility to provide all the calculations if you want to go down that path of testing for concentration limits versus mass limits. Alternative NOx testing monitoring, that there was a suggestion we should be using the data loggers that are already there as part of the Tier 4 final engines. We have looked into that. We haven't seen any other district provide that, and whether we can use that data. Like, they do use inlet outlet NOx for, how much depth they're going to inject. Engine manufacturers look at that. But can we take that data and really use that for compliance purpose? We didn't have enough information when we released the policy memo, so that is something that we'll keep monitoring. Also, the portable analyzers, some districts are allowing it, but when we talk with those districts, they didn't have data from the field where they have allowed this and how they do it. So again, that we have put on the back burner. We will be evaluating that in the future. Next slide. As I said, we have developed our source testing guidance to streamline our processes and the testing requirements. We have been in touch with our source testing group also. And they are the ones who have really helped us put together the document, which is the attachment to the guidance policy. Next slide. So again, these templates are developed primarily for internal use. We have 3 templates, one for certified engine, one for compliant engine, and one for retrofit engines. All the theirs are for internal use. You can look at those and you can determine pretty well what conditions you're getting as part of your permit when it's being permitted. And this helps our engineers, not only expedite the processing of the application, but also standardize those conditions. Next slide. This memo was released and it's on our website. It was released last month. That's the link to the website where the memo is. It's on the back page right now. And as I said, we'll continue to monitor a couple of more things, and as needed, if we have to change anything to revise the memo in the future, we'll look at that. That concludes my presentation. Let me introduce George Illis, who is another manager in our permitting team, and we'll be going through the gas station permitting advisory.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you very much. I was going to say good morning, but I'll say good afternoon. I'm George Illis, engineering manager for the general commercial team, also known as Team O. Team O, most of whose members were hired or promoted in the last year or two, including myself, as Jason alluded to earlier. We handle permitting activity related to gasoline dispensing facilities with GDFs. So I'll be making a brief presentation on a GDF permitting advisory that we're releasing today. Next slide, please. As authorized under the Inflation Reduction Act, the U.S. Department of Agriculture is dispersing approximately $500 million to significantly increase the sale and use of ethanol by incentivizing infrastructure expansion for ethanol derived from U.S. corn. As a result, we have a high rate of incoming E85 applications and related gasoline applications because they're typically submitted in pairs. And consequently, our permitting timelines have been affected. So we're releasing this advisory to increase transparency, improve permit application submittals, and streamline the permitting process. We have links available to the advisory, a related frequently asked questions page, and the opportunity to sign up for a newsletter related to GDF topics. Next slide, please. Some basic GDF application requirements, which naturally apply to equipment in general. Permit application is needed for installation of new equipment or modification of existing equipment. Application package should include correct forms and fees. And a separate application is required for gasoline and E85 equipment. We consider them separate devices. Also, an owner operator may need to reduce existing gasoline throughput to allow for the desired E85 throughput, and they should propose those throughputs when they submit their application. Next slide, please. Some reasons for rejection of GDF permit application, which again apply to equipment in general: failure to sign the required forms or failure to pay the required fee at the time of filing the application, or not providing enough information for us to evaluate the application. An owner operator can authorize a third party to represent and sign for them, but each application must include a notarized service agreement between the parties that is signed by the owner operator. Next slide, please. Some factors that affect application processing timelines. And again, this isn't just for GDFs, but that's my focus today. Scope change after initial application is submitted, or a slow response for requests to additional information. Of course, sometimes a public notice is required because a school is nearby. That'll affect the timeline. Helpful if applicants identify nearby schools on 400A. If not, that also affects the timeline. A health risk analysis may be required for the requested gasoline or E85 throughput, which obviously is going to affect timelines, and failure to identify sensitive receptors on form 400 PS likewise can set things back a bit. And if in some cases an emission reduction credit is required for the desired throughput, that will take some time to go through. Next slide, please. Lastly, here's some additional helpful information. We recommend owner operators staying engaged with the engineer to facilitate the permitting process. We talked about expedited permit processing. It is available. I think everyone understands the situation there. In the past, we've issued GDF permits as a permit to construct / permit to operate, but as Jason mentioned earlier, we're going towards the permit to construct issuance, then the installation of the equipment, any required testing is done, then we issue a permit to operate. All GDF permits include a monthly throughput limit. And for the E85 equipment, the California Air Resources Board has issued a couple of executive orders that limit that throughput to 100,000 gallons per month. So that would be the most that anyone could get there. Stakeholders are invited to visit our Find page to track application progress, and of course can sign up to receive periodic notifications regarding the GDF newsletter. And we have our team hotline, so please call if you have any questions regarding GDFs. And that concludes my presentation. I'll now turn it over to David Ono, Engineering Manager for the Reclaim and Permit Streamlining teams.
Thanks, George. Good afternoon. I'm going to try to go very quickly through these slides. It's just a general informational update on our online tools that we've been working on. So next slide, please. This is just to give an update on progress in terms of permits and registration issued online. So you can see 2023, we continue to have an increased amount of applications that get processed through this tool. A lot of these are other Rule 52 registrations. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder of the modules that are currently available online for online processing, and then reiterating that our certified emergency engines registration permit module is available for use. Next slide, please. And then we do have a few 222 forms that are still in development. These are the less frequently used forms. We do have a commitment to put them all available online, even if they're only used maybe once or twice a year. So we're still working on those. And in terms of the dashboard enhancement, Jason already mentioned a lot of stuff we're trying to work on with that. So I won't get too further along on that. I'll mention one other thing. We referred to the workflow portal, where we took a look at our permit processing as a process flow, where we are calling it the engineering permitting portal. And that is underway. That's going to be integral to our migration from our kind of outdated permitting electronic systems to our more modern one. And just to indicate that is still underway. That kind of concludes that summary. Go back to Jason.
All right, next slide, please, Paul. Bring it home. May open up to the committee for any comments on those three items. David, go ahead.
Thank you for all the presentations. I want to go back to the Tier 4 emergency stationary IC engine source testing guidance and appreciate all the work. Clean Water SoCal wastewater members really appreciate having something that doesn't shut itself off in the middle of emergency. So it's really important to have a compliant option. And we appreciate the living document. But just one clarification as far as the data logging issue. The thing I keep focusing on, if I get the exact same generator, Tier 4 certified, that's gone through EPA testing, I pretty much get the same thing. Go to the manufacturer, they turn the smart brain off, so it won't shut itself off, but it's the same engine, been through the same testing. Isn't the focus of the data logger to tell you, the regulator, that there's an error, there's a flag that it should start derating, rather than what are the emissions? And I just want to clarify that because it's got fine nuance of kind of what we're trying to do with that unique situation. Not a retrofit, but the exact same generator. And just wanted to continue that discussion.
We did talk with the engine manufacturers and trying to determine, I mean, the data logger will give you some data, but it doesn't give you emission data. And that's why we're still requiring testing those engines, which other districts are also requiring testing of compliant engines. This is what we are talking about. We think that with EPA certification, we are assured that it's certified with EPA. They're going to operate for the EPA methods. When you take out like the inducement feature, that affects the emissions. It could affect the emissions if it goes down. So we don't have that assurance of the EPA certification behind that.
I understand where you're coming from. I think we have a difference of opinion, and maybe we should talk offline.
So, yeah, we are trying to find out what the data logger, what additional information it'll give us to not require.
Right. And we have one facility that might be able to share the data logger data, and maybe you could revisit the subject.
Okay, and I think that is what we put in the document is when this concept is out there, we can revisit it. I think the other perspective, you're looking at it from an operational sense. We're looking at it from a regulatory sense is when you take away those protections from the certified system is for our inspectors and, the error is what is the mechanism, the enforceable mechanism to make sure that they're being addressed and then can be checked on by our inspectors and take enforcement action if necessary.
My quasi joke, and I'm somewhat serious about the following is when you get that fault with the data logger, it'll print out an NOV right there. It's like you're operating in violation. If you have that data, it tells you for enforcement, you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. So that's kind of the concept in simplistic terms of if it's not working, it's a problem, but in an emergency, you got to pick your poison.
Right. Emergency, different situation. We look at that, but that's sort of it. But we left the opportunities open or in the document to revisit it.
Much appreciated.
All right. Any other comments from our committee? No. All right. Let me open it up for public comment. Bill. Bill Amar, we'll go to you first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, my comments on David Ono's presentation. Gosh, I think it must have been 4, maybe even 5 years ago when staff first started on this and showed us the genesis of this online permitting with the goal of eventually becoming paperless. And I am really heartened to see that it's coming along. But it's a shame that it's taken this long, but of course, 3 of those years were pandemic years. But anyway, I just wanted to comment and say, you know, how I was enthusiastic about this concept from the very beginning, and I was even instrumental in bringing several trade associations to your very room to ask questions and to volunteer to try it out, to beta test this. So my hat's off to all of you, including David, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you for your efforts as well, staff's efforts. I think with some of the recent developments, we hit a sweet spot with certain modules and are really seeing the benefits from it. And then also taking some of the lessons learned and using those as we modernize our permitting system and you know, go into online filing for our regular permits. So yes, it's been very beneficial for all of us. So hats off to everybody involved. Thank you. All right, I will go back to public comment.
No.
I don't see any hands raised. So close out that item and we'll go to other business. I'll have a couple items, but does any of the committee members want to bring up any other business we haven't discussed? All right, seeing none, I will add there is an item out there regarding diesel particulate filters. If any permit applicants are having difficulty with verified or non-verified diesel particulate filters, please reach out to staff and we can have those discussions on potentials for a path forward. But we're actively engaging with CARB and the manufacturers of those DPFs to try and reach a resolution or those path forwards for some permit applications which are stuck in the middle of this. So reach out if you have DPF issues. Again, I'll just also reiterate some of what we talked about. We recognize staffing was an issue. We still have a long way to go. I want to thank everybody. We're going to really throw some resources at some impacted teams to try and move things along much more quickly, but hope to keep meeting in this forum to try and address and improve the situations and get permits out more quickly. So let me open up for public comment on other business before we have a hand raised for Sandy Hoffman. Sandy, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Sandy.
Okay, hi, Sandy Hoffman with Tank Tech Environmental. Sorry, I'm going to go back a little bit just to the GDFs for Rule 461 for permits that are submitted. Question for you, like I work with GM Oil. They have a lot of stations and we're consistently doing upgrades, conversions, I should say, a lot of E85 and B20 fuel. We have a lot of applications for dispenser upgrades as well with them, changing from Healy to Balance a lot of the time with the cleaner separator still intact. We see where we submit the permits to the CUPAs, and on average, those permits get approved within about 3 months, but then their permits expire within 180 days. So then we are still sitting on the South Coast AQMD permits that have been submitted for these type of modifications that are at times up to 300+ days. When it gets to the 180-day window for the CUPA permit to expire, we kind of have to pick a poison. Do we want to do the upgrade and pay the fee to South Coast AQMD for doing the work before the permit's been approved? Or do we want to pay the fee to extend the permit with the CUPA, and you're kind of balancing which one's going to cost more money? So on certain situations like that, for like a simple, let's just say a simple dispenser upgrade, could there be a factor where you guys could do like an as-built permit option for something minor, or even like with a software upgrade for a Veeder-Root?
Yeah.
I didn't hear exactly could you say that one more time, your last question, Sandy? I'm sorry.
So with like minor modifications where we have Coupa permits, such as dispenser upgrades, like a straight swap or like a Healy to a balance system, or Vita-Root software upgrades, is there a way that South Coast AQMD could throw in an as-built option for something? So we do something minor like that and submit a permit in for approval after the fact. Like Coupas do allow as-builts a lot of the time for smaller stuff where you're not breaking ground, you're not affecting product lines. And because our big problem is we're submitting permits to South Coast AQMD, for example, a Vita-Root software upgrade or a dispenser upgrade, and the permits are sitting much longer than the 180-day window where a Coupa permit is expired now.
Okay. I think we can try and address some of your question for dispensers. That is, and thank you, Sandy. As you mentioned, we have everybody lined up for E85 permits in addition to G&M oil. That is why staff is getting inundated because there's a lot of free money out there. So a lot of stations are lining up for these. So that's why we're trying to address these situations. We can keep talking about that. The dispenser issue too, I don't know if we're getting into too much detail. I kind of want to, discuss this because we're talking about gas stations, but I think some of the dispenser upgrades and some of the options available to us, we've been talking about as far as how to better facilitate and what needs to go in what needs permitting and what doesn't. If we can maybe update some of those at a later date, but if we can maybe touch base with you after this and probably get some of the more ideas on the dispenser issue, we can have more back and forth. I think we can do that. And there's opportunity. We're always looking to streamline. We do have to keep in line with our permitting requirements because some of our rules do dictate that construction cannot begin till after the permit's issued, but we have to probably get a little bit more information from you on where this lands with that idea.
Okay, yeah, because it mainly comes down to like warranty issues. Like, for example, G&M Oil gets a lot of dispensers from Wayne and they're sitting in a garage, and we got permits that are sitting for 300 days. And then we got Coupa permits that have been approved and almost expiring. So then you got all these dispensers that are about to be out of warranty, and we're still waiting on a permit from South Coast AQMD almost a year later, just for just a straight dispenser swap, or they're just changing the dispensers from a Healy Assist to a balanced VSD with the clean air separator still intact.
Okay.
So I think that's the biggest thing that we run into a lot right now.
Okay, we'll kind of jump into that because I know CARB has some requirements we have to follow on that as well for major modifications. Let's keep talking about that and your ideas. Obviously, with the impacted team, we're trying to resolve that issue and just get back up to speed. So this isn't even a topic we have to bring up anymore, and you're just getting your permits in a timely
And just
manner.
a little bug into your ear that you guys could kind of bring in for a future meeting. The fact that the TLS 450 has been approved and it's getting to the part where they're not going to be manufacturing parts anymore for the 350. So that's going to be a big issue if the 350 goes down at the station and we're stuck with permitting and can't put that 450 in.
Okay, we will definitely keep talking about that. But again, that was some of what I was identifying before, is trying to get out in front of items that are going to be incoming to our permit system and how best to handle them. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. Carol, go ahead. One more comment. Finish up.
Question, actually. So we've talked a lot about the online and submittals, and I was just wondering for permit applications, can we actually do electronic submittals of those at this point with a check? So it's just like, I mean, it's not something that's in the system currently, right, online, but it's another type of application.
Right.
Can those go in just by emailing it to permit service?
Because I think we've been doing, what's the permit services email?
Permit services
Online, that's what it is.
So you can
Yes.
actually, okay, so that does do that. And then once we receive the permit to operate or construct in the, like by email, if an engineer emails it to us, is it effective and ready to go at that point?
It will be approved in our system. So if you worry about inspectors, they see the same data. So it will have a permit number, permit issuance date. They'll probably have access to, electronic copy as well while you're awaiting that information. So that's why we do that before the hard copy comes.
That helps a lot.
And then hopefully we get a better system through all of this that it just happens instantly. All right.
I just want to say one thing in response to Sandy's comment about going from 350 to 450 is we don't require a modification application for that, Sandy. So just to let you know, you don't need to submit an application to modify. You can just go ahead and go from 350 to 450.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that concludes a very lengthy task force, but as I said, I think we were all expecting it, given current circumstances, but appreciate everybody's time, input. And we'll keep talking about this. We're going to be meeting more often, so, looking forward to hearing everybody's feedback as we work through some of these issues.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.